Hi, good evening. Thank you very much for coming today. And it's really big space. And so I'm really happy to see so many people join to this lecture. And I will talk about something between nature and architecture for about 1 hour. And I like to start from my background. I was grown up in Hokkaido. It's a northern island of Japan. And it's like full of nature. So I was playing in the nature, climbing up the trees, and something like that. So until the end of the high school, I was like that, together with the nature. And then when I get into the university, I moved to Tokyo. Yeah, as you can see, it's super ugly city and really crowded. And of course, I learned architecture in this environment. And then I'm now based in Tokyo, and I have an office in Paris now. But yeah, even though this is two opposite situations, for me, it is both of them are my background. And for me, both of them are like melting to each other to create something like a positive contradiction or like interrelationships or inter-inspirations from one side to the other side, from nature to the architecture. And I believe architecture could create the new viewpoint from which we can see those two opposite things as the same things. Or we can say the architecture could integrate such a completely different things together to create the better values and a better living environment. And for example, this private house in Tokyo, it is, yeah, as you can see, this is quite small plot, like a typical Tokyo plot. And if you just like to make a normal house, you can have small living space, small dining space, small bedrooms. So that's just boring. So we talked with the client how to go beyond that. And we try to go to the opposite directions, not just to have the big living space. The biggest one is just a small living space in this site. So we try to go to the opposite side to make a smaller rooms, or even not the rooms, just a smaller areas, but more varieties. So we divided the plot in smaller pieces. Even the biggest one is just a 2.5 by 2.5 meter. Smallest one is a 70 centimeter by 70 centimeters. So it's almost the size of the furniture. And then we stuck them in a various different distances, various different gap, to make such a three-dimensional areas. And then what happened was each areas has the different distances and different relationships, and then different meanings. Sometimes those small space, the seating height is super low, it's less than 1 meter. So it is, in a normal meaning, it is not the room. But if you just sit inside, then it is really tiny but human, cozy reading space, or such kind of a small space, small rooms. But sometimes those spaces, yes, she's sitting there, but it is just the landing of the staircases. Or we call this as a library, but it's quite narrow areas, but we have a bookshelves, and then we can have a chairs. So the meaning of the space is always changing, depends on how you react to those kind of small plates. How to use these small plates sometimes as a furniture, or sometimes as a room, or sometimes as a shelves, and so on. So normally the functional space, the function in a 20th century modern architecture, it is like a prefixed. You say this is a dining space, so you eat there. But in this house, the meaning of the plate is always changing. Sometimes this plate is almost like the size of the height of the table, so you can even eat on it, or you can walk through it, or you can put something on it as a shelves, or you can use it as a desk or something like that. So those kind of the interaction between the space and your intention or your body is making a lot of varieties of way of usage. That is the way to go beyond the normal size. We try to go beyond the size, but we try to achieve such a diversities and varieties. Then, as a result, as you can see, if you are inside the room, you see all those small pieces are floating around you, not only the floors and the columns, but those pieces of your daily stuffs, and then finally surrounding you to create kind of territories which protect you, to make you feel comfortable, protected, and cozy, and at the same time it's free to do whatever you like. And this is, it was a surprise when I get into this house, when it is finished. This was the feelings when I was in the small forest in my hometown. In the forest, you are surrounded by many small branches, small leaves, and you feel you are protected, surrounded. But still, it's open for you to climb up the trees or walk around the trees or something like that. So protected, but still your behaviors, your intention is quite open. That is the similarity between natural forest and this house, artificial forest, we can say. You can see all of these elements, straight lines, metallic, and flat. So it is super opposite from the nature forest, but the experience and the feelings of the space is the same, I think. So we can say the private house could be like artificially designed forest, and the functions is like you are like from this branch to the other branches, you jump to one another to find out your own comfortable space. It's like you are like a monkey or birds or something like that. So it's more fundamental functions or more relating to your own instincts. Anyway, in here, in this house, transparent, white, clean, but at the same time, it's quite like a natural, soft impressions is happening. So opposite things are integrated by the reinvented new geometries and reinvented the treatment of the materials. And in this pavilion in London, in the Serpentine Pavilion, we went much more forward to try to find out what is the limit of architecture, or what is the limit of the wall, what is the meaning of the ceilings, structures, walls, and the chairs in the rooms, and functions, boundaries, and simplicity, complexity, everything. We try to re-question everything. It is made by the really thin steel pipes, 2 centimeters. So it's quite like quite small. And we made such a grid, and the frame, the module is 40 centimeters. So you can, and we put the glass on it, so you can stepping up or you can sit on it, but at the same time, it is going up to cover you. So it is surrounding you, but it's not like a wall, it's not like a ceilings, it's more like a cloud, softly surrounding you. So the boundary is not so strong, but still you feel you are surrounded by something. So we try to redefine the meaning of the wall, meaning of the structures, meaning of the ceilings, and the meaning of the functions, because those kind of sitting areas is already integrated into the main structures. So we couldn't find any clear boundaries. Everything is melted. And from outside, we can walk on it. So it is almost like a part of the landscape. And inside, even inside, we have those kind of stepping areas. So it's part of the landscape, but part of the furnitures, part of the functions. And sometimes you can see one woman sitting in the middle of the frames. It's open public space, but still she found out really private, cozy areas for her. So in here, the boundaries between the private and the public is already melting. And it relates, or it depends on how you feel, or how you found out your own privacies, or how you find out your like open public spaces, communicating with your friends or communicating with 100 to 200 people inside. Transparencies, also, it is like something beyond the normal meaning of the wall and the window. Yeah, normally we have the wall like this, and then we have a window. But in here, the transparencies is just the gradations. Really transparent, a little bit transparent, and it gets more opaque. And those kind of gradations is changing when you walk around, because it's like a relative depth of the structures, relative layering of the structures. Then, if you move around, of course, the structure is not moving, it's fixed, it's still, strong. But if you move around, then the impression of these densities or opaqueness is always changing according to your movement. And then you feel, I am surrounded by something really soft. And some part is really protecting, solid, but sometimes some part is really open to the sky or open to the greens. So those kind of the movement and the non-movement situation is, again, reintegrated. So in this project, we try to reintegrate almost all the elements of architecture. Walls, ceilings, boundaries, windows, structures, columns, and the beams, and the slabs, furnitures, and the functions, and the transparencies, and the inside and the outside. And also, conceptually, everything is made by the straight line and the 90 degree, so it's super, super artificial geometries. But when it is built, you can see it's really soft. It's like a cloud. Then the boundary between the straightness and the softness is vanishing. And everything is really simple in a sense, because it's just made by the same module. Super simple, but super complex and super diverse. So we try to reinvent something different from existing architecture. So we try to re-question what is the meaning of the wall, what is the meaning of the structure, what is the meaning of the straight line, what is the meaning of the functions, and everything. And try to go down to the bottom of the meaning of the architecture, and then coming back with the new geometry, new definition, a new understanding of the architecture itself. So in that sense, this is kind of a really extreme experiments to redefine architecture. And finally, of course, it is just a pavilion only for 4.5 months. So it is not architecture yet, but thinking or understanding of the space and your body and interactions are already like a purely architectural thinking. So I think those kind of sometimes those kind of experiment or re-questioning and re-understanding and redefining what is architecture is quite important to find out your way to go. Suddenly, I like to talk about huge project. This is a competition we entered in the Middle East, and the length of the site was 1.2 kilometers, so it's super long. And then the program was the shopping center, huge shopping center in the middle of the desert. That was the first time for me to be involved into the Middle East project, so I was really excited. Then we did the competitions. And the first things we did was to make those kind of towers, because the site was flat. So we thought, anyway, it should have a landmark as a tower. But this tower is not only just an object, but it has the huge void, atrium inside, to make the natural ventilations, to bring the rather cooler airs from the bottom, and then the hot air is going up. It's like a chimney, huge chimney, to react to their climate conditions. And then, of course, those kind of atrium could be fantastic for the shoppings. We have the retail shops around there, surrounding the atriums, and then we have a big atriums. But of course, the most exciting point of this project was this structure. You can see we have many repetitions of the arches and the circular shapes to create the whole structures. And then the glass line is set back from the surfaces. So finally, it was not only the structures, but it is like the sunshade against the really strong sunlight of the Middle East areas. And yeah, that is why you can see we have many repetitions of the structures. And finally, it is like a filtering the sunlight, controlling the sunlight to get the proper brightness. The particle of the light is coming in, but most of the light is blocked. So again, this is not just the object designed from outside, but natural ventilation systems, and structurally it is like relating to the climate conditions to create the huge screens against the sunlight. So all of those kind of a given or existing conditions are studied and re-questioned and finally integrated into one simple form. So that is the point of this project. Of course, it has really strong shapes, and it has the really strong shape of the arches and then the sharp towers, but the intention is to create such a beautiful integrations. And then finally, this integration represent how those background of the project is really respected and how we try to react all of them and to give it a simple and like a memorable shapes on it. But interesting things of this is if you take out all those arches and circular shapes, the basic geometry is almost the same as the serpentine pavilion. It's just a repetition of the grids. But of course, the scale is completely different. The serpentine was like this. It's tiny scales, and then the 20-meter small pavilions, and this one is 1.2 kilometers. So it means we can jump from such a tiny scales to the huge crazy scales by the same concept, but in a different understanding. That is also the exciting part of the architecture design. The power of the concept could be extended in a different places, different areas, different climate conditions, different craziness, but we can think it's possible. Your idea is not just what you think. If you meet with such a strange situations, unexpected conditions, then your ideas could be changed, expanded to the point you didn't expect by yourselves. That is quite like exciting point. And of course, we thought this is the Middle East, so client must have a lot of money. So, okay, putting the waters in the middle of the buildings to put the ships and the boats to do, I don't know, what kind of a craziness of the shoppings and so on, and to make such a translucent, beautiful towers. We thought we can do everything. So we did. We sent 20 A0 panels for the submission. And finally, they just sent one email that His Highness, the King, changed his mind and everything's just stopped and canceled. That's also could happen, whatever could happen. And of course, disappointing. But at the same time, for me, I was rather happy because finally we reached to the point we didn't expect, really unexpected situations because of such a crazy conditions of the competition. So it is without given programs, without given site, we couldn't reach to that point by ourselves. In that sense, it is like the collaboration with those craziness of the project and our ideas. And of course, I love this project, And every time I do the lecture in abroad, I'm showing this project because I am expecting some of you have money. And of course, you love architecture. So we could have nice collaborations to create these historical things. So please just let me know after the lecture, secretly. Yeah. And I like to talk also about some new development of the grid. Recently, we won the competition in Switzerland. It is a new learning center for the St. Gallen University. St. Gallen is the beautiful city of many kind of the culturally and educationally, it is quite like a high level. And this is it. The title is Open Grid, so it is made of the grids. And as you can see, it's like a stacked boxes. So you can imagine it's made by the grids. And inside is like this. And in here, the request was to create such a flexibility of the future learning because we don't know what is the future learning environment. So they are just expecting kind of the flexibilities, but at the same time, it's like inspiring students. Those flexibilities inspiring students. So this is not the flexibility of normal, boring, and neutral spaces, but the flexibility which allow students to do many different things, but at the same time, which stimulate, inspire students to do something. And of course, if you think about the flexibility, the grid is one of the most normal starting point. So if you just follow to the grids, it must be maybe just normal things. And it is always like challenges to use grid. I have been using the grids many times, but the grid is quite simple, normal, and everybody can do it. So it is quite big challenge to do something new by the grids. And in this case, of course, I felt the grid is fitting to their request for the flexibility, but then how we can do with the grids. And then you can see it is like we have a huge atrium in the middle. It has beams and columns, so it is rather like the traditional Japanese warehouse or the residential house. But those kind of the grids is making the divisions, but at the same time, it is showing the possibilities or potentials where students can use those kind of frames as an extension of their activities, hangings or puttings or somethings to use the spaces in a three-dimensionally. And also, this is the view from above. The grids could have the possibilities or flexibilities, not only for inside, but for outside, because we can just play with one grid adding or one grid taking out to create the whole shapes, really fitting to the whole surroundings, because we have the neighbor residential buildings around it, and then we have the existing university campus. So how we make these new buildings harmonized or almost part of the environment is also request the kind of the flexibility for the shapes. So flexibility inside and flexibility outside, that is why we chose the grids. So it's like kind of the creatures which is fitting themselves to the environment and which allow students to stimulate students to behave as they like. And this is the diagrams to show the St. Gallen is like the valley. So it is located in the slope. The existing university is like a stepping. So we are just respecting those kind of existing environment. And of course, we have neighbors. So again, this is stepping down to reduce the impact to the neighbors. So it's quite like a simple treatment, but because of those flexibilities, it is like really naturally harmonized with the surroundings. And then, of course, we have the huge atrium. They say it's a cloister of the monastery. Actually, in the middle of the St. Gallen city, they have a really historical monastery. That is why in the program, they talked about the cloisters. So we reinterpret the cloisters in a three-dimensional ways. That is why we have the huge atriums and the staircases to create the three-dimensional cloisters. And then finally, those atriums is creating such kind of an interactive viewpoint. From this point to the other point, students can see what is happening there. So different activities, different classes, they can see each other and they can get an inspirations to each other. Those kind of interactive relationships must be the future education situation, because it's not like this is not the future education. One guy standing here and then everybody listening. But the future education is more like a multi-relationships. Somebody talked there and then I got an inspiration from there. So those kind of interrelationship could be the future education. That is why this is central point, but then nobody is sitting here, but everybody is just exchanging their thinkings, exchanging their views to each other. So this is just a medium to allow such an interconnections. And of course, the grids has simple flexibilities. And then finally, those kind of a juxtaposition of the different activities from left side to the other side could happen. And then everybody can see it, walk through it, and then see it and join it as they like. And again, those frames could be, it's like infrastructures for students to extend their activities as they like. And inspirations came out from those grids, and then some kind of interventions to the grids, and then another inspirations came out from that kind of intervention. So interactive communication between the structure and the students, or between students and students are happening. So in that case, this is, again, super pure grids, but how we re-understand the grids to create the connections to the programs and the connection to the site conditions and the climate conditions, and try to reinvent the grid itself. So the grid, it's quite boring, but if you can find something new from such a really old, normal things, that is really fun. It's like an amazing moment, because you are the one who reinvent the grids. Because normal things, everybody saw it already, but still you can find something new from that. That is kind of a nice challenges. Okay, I'd like to go back to the tiny project in Japan. This is public toilet, like this. It's tiny. And the program of the public toilet is quite interesting, I think, because it's public, but once you are inside, it's really private. So again, public on one side, and then really private on the other side. How to do with these opposite things. But it's possible to make kind of the integration or coexistence of those contradictions. Or if you are in the middle of those countryside, it's nice to open your view, but of course at the same time it should be closed from the view from around it. So how to close it and how to open it, it is also has been really historical question of fundamental question of architecture from the beginning of the history. Because a long time ago, maybe 2,000, 3,000, or 10,000 ago, people made a wall to block, to protect themselves. But if it is just closed, it's sad. So they opened the window. That was the starting point of the architecture. And from that point, how to close and how to open, how to make the coexistence of this closing and protecting and openness has been really fundamental questions. And in here, it is still the big questions. And of course, nature and architecture is a big question. So in that sense, public toilet, it sounds funny, but it is one of the really significant programs for architects. And that is why I said yes when I get the phone call for the commission. Even though it's just a one toilet, it is quite exciting. And what we did was, of course, you can see the glass box and toilet, and we designed this black wall like this, oval. And we made a door, and once you get inside, you can lock the door. And then, once you lock the door, the inside of this garden is like your private garden. So it's okay you do toilet in the glass box, because it's 2.5 meter wall is protecting yourself. So it's open, you can see all the surroundings, but still it's really, really protected. And this is kind of like a, I don't know, not reinvention, but the result of really careful study of boundary. Boundary, sometimes we say wall, but the normal wall has two different meanings melted to each other. One meaning is block the air, and another meaning is block the view. That is a little bit different. And then in this case, this black wall is blocking the view, but not blocking the air. That is why even inside of this black wall, it's outside. The air continues, and openness we have. And this glass wall, it is the opposite. It is blocking the air to create the minimal shelter for the toilet, but it is not blocking the view. So two different types of walls, carefully designed, blocking the view, blocking the air, but openness, and then we designed the proper distance. Finally, it is possible to realize or to make the coexistence of contradictional situations quite open but still protected. This is the plan. Glass box, wall, and the door. It's quite simple, and it works. And of course, if you are in a kind of emergency situations, it must be a bit tough, because finally you reach to the doors and you open the door and then you will find another 15 meters to run. So it's a bit the problem, but in a normal situation it works. And then of course we don't have so much budget, so the wall is really simply done. It's like a timber piles sticking into the ground, so no concrete foundations, and then just attached onto the top. So it's really simple, but this simplicity makes the whole project better, I think. And then we kept the existing trees, and we kept the landscape as natural as possible, so that it is like a natural green field. And finally, it's done, and it's public, but it gets a bit famous because of those kind of a strange treatment of the toilet. And then, good things for the city, the local city, many tourists come using a big bus, not only one bus, but the two buses and three buses, and 30 people, 100 people made a long queue just to take photos for the Instagram. And it was okay at that time, but of course, if you have 100 people, some of them just likes to do the toilet. They come, in the bus, they've heard, wow, next stop is the toilet. So then some of them, okay, we can do the toilet. But then when they arrived, just a long queue, so they couldn't do the toilet. And they just complained to the city about it. This should be the toilet, not the place for the Instagram, something like that. So the city government solved the problem, they said. And then the local government thought about it seriously. And finally, they decided to put temporary mobile toilet just behind this wall to solve the problems. It was a good solution, I think. And then, in the long history of architecture, this is the first time to put the toilet for the toilet. So it's really historical things. But anyway, I like to say, seriously, even in such a tiny project, if you think about architecture in a really fundamental way, we can make such a unique, special things to reinvent the boundaries or reinvent the meaning of the walls and so on. So that is kind of the nice things, because sometimes the tiny project, you can control everything and you can deeply get inside, get into the bottom, and then you yourself can invent, and yeah, people could enjoy it. This is also relating to the boundaries, but in a different way. This is the library for Art University, and it's all made by the bookshelves. Of course, at the very beginning, I was thinking, what is the meaning of the library, or what is the fundamental meaning of the library? And of course, it's the place for books. So I tried to make the library only by the bookshelf, only by the books, only by the bookshelves. Then it started, gets more spiral to create a space for people. And finally, it is like this. It's like the huge spiral of the bookshelves to create the 6,000 square meter library, only made by one continuous bookshelves. So it's just fun to see such a contrast of the simplicity and the complexity. But the important part is those openings on these bookshelf walls. And as you can see, this is like a layered wall, and then we have many openings, and then you will see the space behind it, almost endlessly. The concept or thinkings behind this structure was, of course, we thought about what is a library. Library is a place where you can search books systematically, and you can read or study or something. So it is super functional spaces. But on the other hand, I was thinking the library could be the place where you can just walk around without any intentions, without any purposes, just walk around in the forest. And then sometimes you could be encountered with unexpected books or unexpected ideas, new ideas, and something like that. And this is completely like the non-functional spaces. So functional research, searching books, systematic side on one hand, and on the other hand, it's like a forest or chaotic or complex spaces. And we try to create those kind of forest-like aspects of the libraries by no using actual trees, only by using the bookshelves. And then this was the solutions to create the layering of the bookshelves, walls, with the openings. It means those openings is showing space behind, but doesn't show everything. And then the layering showing space behind and behind and behind. You can see something, but you couldn't see everything. That stimulates your curiosity. Something is visible, but not everything. Then you start to walk to find out what it is. But if you start to walk around, the different perspective, different layers coming out to you, so those kind of the interactions between the space and your curiosity is almost like endlessly repeating. That was the situation when we experienced in the forest when we are walking around. You just walk around, and some area, because you don't see everything, but you see some area must be interesting, you go for that, and then you will find something, or you will find the other place is more interesting. Those kind of endless continuity of the curiosity is like the space of the forest. So that is why we try to make it like this. Many openings, spiral, so layering. So you can feel you walk around as you like. And if you go through one bookshelf, then new perspective open to you, and then you will find another openings. So almost like endlessly continuing. That was the systems we thought about. It's really super geometrical, using the artificial materials. Still, the relationship between the space and your psychology and your body behaviors, then the experiences gets really closer to the experience in the forest. And then finally it's done. You will see the layers of the bookshelves is continuing and vanishing. And again, the layering of the bookshelves. The ceiling is made by it has a skylight and covered by the plastic plates, so it is more like a softened light and looks like a cloud and reflecting the bookshelves, so the ceiling is not the dead end in here. And then in this photo, you will see how the layering of the spaces is showing quite small, limited part, but then you can imagine some spaces is spreading behind it, or this spiral shape is making the vanishing point, and then the curiosity, your curiosity is inspired. What is happening behind it? And sometimes, after walking a lot, get sleep. And I love this photo very much because she is representing how comfortable this space is. But actually, important point of this photo is the scales. The gap between one bookshelf and the other bookshelf is almost like a 4 meter, 5 meter. So it's almost like the residential scales. So it's really cozy and comfortable to sit or to sleep. But in the same space, if you sit or stand in the middle of this libraries, then you will see suddenly the space is almost endless, vast, spreading more than 80 meters, but you don't see the end. So then you feel you couldn't see where's the end of this library. It's almost like an infinite. And then the gap between tiny residential cozy scales and then infinite scales, we can have such the range, huge range from human scales to the infinite scales. And then you just come from here to there, go around with the different scales. That is fundamental functions of the library, I think. It should not be just the infinite spaces, should not be just the human scales. The combinations or gradations from human scales to the infinite could be the fundamental part of the library. So in that sense, this simple system of the spiral bookshelves is automatically creating the varieties of the scales. And then from outside in the evening, it's almost like the infinite space inside. And now I like to talk about ongoing project, mostly in France. After I got an office in Paris, we have more chances to be involved into the competitions and so on. But this was the first one. We were involved into the French competition, and fortunately we won. It was 5 years ago, and now it is under construction. It is a housing in Montpellier, the south of France, rather Mediterranean climate. And what we are doing now is like this, 50-meter high, huge balconies sticking out, because again, it is like we try to make a conversation with the local conditions, the Mediterranean climate. So even in the wintertime, in the February, they can have a lunch on outside. That's nice, that's fantastic. And that has been the traditional lifestyle of these areas. So we try to respect it, and even in the contemporary high-rise buildings, I like to realize those kind of rich lifestyles. And then we tested a lot of different things to do how we can achieve the huge, huge outdoor spaces. And finally, we reached to quite simple strategy to have huge balconies sticking out from the core. It is like this. And then the pergolas to block the sunlight, or balconies. And the biggest one is 6 meter wide and 8 meter deep, so it's quite huge. And as you can see, each apartment house has 2, 3 balconies for each. Not only one balconies, but the 2, 3, 4 balconies from each. So it is quite like most of the living space are on outside. And the shape is like this. It's a bit the round shape. So that is why it looks like pineapples or pine cones, something organic. Because the site is, the shape itself is like this. It is because we try to respect the site conditions. There is a river and the green area park alongside the river. So we try to continue this green park like this. This is our site. But then we push the buildings to the roundabout side, and then we have the existing housing on the north. So we try to keep as much view as possible. That is why we push the side of the buildings more close to the roundabout, and as a result, we have such irregular shapes. But because of these irregular shapes, the ideas to putting the balconies, again, this is rather normal. The building core and then the balconies is one of the, we can say one of the really boring, typical typology of housing buildings. But because of those kind of a unique shape and because of the size of the balconies, and finally, the elements is same, but something new, something different happened. So again, that kind of the challenge is to the normal, boring things, to change it into the new things is kind of the excitement of the creative activities, I think. And then you can see the apartment, 1, 2, or sometimes duplex, 2-level apartment has a 2-level balconies connected by the outdoor staircases. So actually it is quite like a 3-dimensional living space hanged onto the outside. A nice view to the Mediterranean Sea and the mountains. And now it is under construction. We made a mock-up to test the structurally and the details and so on. And putting people, it was okay, of course. And then now it's like this. The building core is made by the concrete, and then we attached those balconies, steel structures, from the top. And then this is a few months ago, and now it is coming in the middle, and it will be finished in September, October, November, around that. This is France, so I couldn't say when exactly it is. But it is ongoing, and I am really looking forward to see it because, of course, the building itself is exciting, but after the completion, all the owner starts to do the life on the balconies, bringing out the chairs and the tables and the parasols and the many different crazy things on outside. And then finally you will see all of those buildings is covered by the life itself. That is really amazing point. Building design is important, but more important things is how we celebrate the life and how to create the new definition of the high-rise. This is 50 meters, so it's not super high-rise, but still high-rise. The whole buildings is covered by the life itself, 3-dimensional life. And then you will see every day different life is happening there. That must be the most exciting point of this project. So this platform is, of course, beautiful itself, but more like infrastructures which support their life, because the life is more important and more beautiful than this building itself. So that is why I'm really looking forward to see how such a beautiful life on it could create the really unique expression of the building. And we also won the last year the project in Nice, again the Mediterranean climate. Maybe our architectural attitude is really fitting to those kind of openness of the life. And this is it. This is also the 50-meter high, and then the strategy is the same, huge balconies, but in this case it's more continuous. And the huge slab, which has many, many openings to create more like a three-dimensional spaces, spatial experiences. This is the model. All of those kind of a huge cantilever is hanged from the structures on the top. So you can see we have a big beam on the top, and then all of them are hanged by those kind of thin cables. Actually, economically, the main part is quite like a simple to make it cheaper, and then the balcony is quite like a strange curvatures. And this is almost the first time for me to use those curvatures, because I was just get inspired by, this is Nice, and then the coastline of those Côte d'Azur is really beautiful curvatures. So I like to respect, or I like to respond to that, to create a new expression of these buildings, to create like a new landmark of the city of Nice. And, and then we have some public programs, shared programs in the middle, but most of the floors are the housings. And this is the diagrams to show how huge balconies with the openings to create a view to the skies, or the feelings of the multiple floors, but outside, but floating in the sky like feelings. And it is the view, and so on. So this is, of course, like the brother of the Montpellier project, but then this is much like a challenge is to create the layering of the slabs. It's more like a slabs to create the different expression in outside. So we can say this is exterior. So we don't have as a space. Almost all the apartment there should be interior designed by the owner, or the interior designer hired by the owner. But we couldn't say there is no space, because the space is on these balconies, and the layering of the balcony is architectural space. And then how to create the potentials of new way of creating such an openness of the spaces was really, really big challenges. And I'm really looking forward to develop these ideas. And this is also, we just won a few months ago, around Paris, just out of Paris. And this is, again, around 80-meter high, huge complex, 28,000 square meters. Then the mixtures of the programs, the retails, office, housings, and the sports, and the rooftop bar, and something, so on. So it's like a big city, vertical cities. And you can see the location was a bit unique, because we have here 50-meter high office, typical office building, and then those kind of small houses on the south side, and the housing blocks, and the supermarket on that side. So we try to react or listen carefully what is happening around it. And then the mixtures of the programs is interesting, because it's like it's the mixtures as the diversities and as a city. So we try to make kind of the identity of this area representing what is happening around it, and representing what could happen in the future. That is why we carefully make the building lower for the south side to harmonize with this. And then on the north side, we can make it much higher. And in the middle, we have, it's important connections between this side and the other side. So that is why we make a big gate, and then make it a bit low. So all of those shapes are like a reaction on one hand, it's a reaction to the surroundings, but on the other hand, like a reinterpretation of these areas for the futures. That is why the skyline is quite unique. And it's also, in a sense, iconic, but at the same time, it should be human. Again, those kind of the opposite things, the two different opposite things should be well integrated. And then we try to make it landmark, but at the same time, human scales. So the shape itself is really iconic, landmark, but as you can see, it's really fragmented and relating to the scales of those kind of human surroundings and relating to the scales of the balconies and so on. And then stepping down to make a stepping terraces. So all of those kind of a treatment is the trial to integrate such a different conditions, requesting the landmark, really strong landmark, but at the same time should be really human scales and harmonize with the surroundings. The program is like this. So it's quite like a mixture of the yellow is the housings, and the red is the retails, and the green is office, and the blue is the sports. So those kind of mixtures is, of course, super energetic, but at the same time it's a wrapping by the one almost continuous expression to create the landmark, the power of the landmark like this. And inside, yeah, we make it. So finally, it's like this. And it is, I hope, it could be the new typologies of the skyline of the city. Sometimes the skyline, we say, it sounds like just a shape. But the skyline is not only the shape, I think. It is the representation of the history of that areas, a representation of the current situations, and then representation of the future in a sense. So the new skyline could be the exciting topics architects can really think about it and give a shape or give not shape or form or existence maybe, how this area or this community could be in a near futures. So in that sense, the skylines or existence or the shape, form is also quite important, I think. So this is the last project. It's in Paris. It's crazy. The concept is to create the floating forest right above the city of Paris. And as you know, the city of Paris has the height limitation. It's like a 28 meter, 30 meter, 35 meter something, but it's really beautifully harmonized. And if you have the floating forest right above those height limitations, then it is really respecting those kind of the harmony of the city of Paris, but at the same time, it's really something new. And from outside, it's quite visible as a new landmark. And from the top of this floating forest, you can overview the whole Paris because of those kind of height limitations. So in that sense, it is like a nice contrast and harmony and challenges and respect to the city of Paris. And especially Paris is Paris. It's a special place. So, and then which has the history, but at the same time, which accepted many new crazy things throughout the whole history. They have new things, and then the contrast between new things and existing Paris make both of them powerful and beautiful. That is quite exciting point. So when we did the competitions, we thought about it, and we tried to react to those kind of the fundamental meaning of the city of Paris. And yeah, this is the floating forest above, almost like a 30 meter, and then big volumes, setback, the forest on the bottom, and the retails. The location is special. It's almost alongside the Champs-Élysées and the Arch of Triumph, Rouville, La Défense, And on the peripheric, on the highway, it is crazy again. Half of the site is on the highway. We have a retail part as a podium. We have a floating forest with many houses on it. And then this strange shape has the offices and the hotels and the forest. And from the top of this floating forest, you could see we have many, many small houses. That is, again, like the contrast and the harmony against the Paris. Because most of the houses in Paris is like the apartment blocks, no such an independent houses. So we try to bring the new way of lifestyle on it, but still it is on the height limitations. So it is like make a nice conversations. And of course, these villages in the middle of the forest, open to the view to the Eiffel Towers, open to the view to the whole city of Paris. This is the diagrams we showed at the competitions, starting from this existing Paris housing block, open the bottom to the forest, to the public people, and transform this rooftop into the floating forest and the villages. Especially the rooftop in Paris is quite like a lively. I love very much. This is the photo I took. This is diverse, human scales, varieties, and full of life, I felt. So I like to respect this one, but completely transform it into the floating forest with the villages. So those kind of a contrast and harmony is again like one of the strategies to that. So in those kind of a different aspects, we have been trying to respect the city of Paris, but then for each topics, we try to bring the counterpart to that, to create the contrast and emphasize again the harmonies with that. And this is the model. It's crazy. Floating forest with many, many houses. The reason we made this shape like this was just to try to open the forest for the lower part, for the public use. If you just make, because the first idea was just to make the floating forest without anything on the bottom. But of course, we are together with the developer to enter to the competition. And from the developer side, they said, then how we get the money for that? Then we have to put the floors. But of course, if you just make a floors like this, it's just a normal building and the rooftop. So we invented, not invented, we just make it like this to have the forest bottom. And then suddenly the whole buildings on the roof, the floating forest looks like a floating forest. And all the buildings are surrounded by the trees. And then on the bottom, we have retails and the kindergartens on it. And this is the view from the bottom. And you see the public forest and then the floating forest, and so on. And this is ongoing. Competition was done 2 years ago, and we are continuing doing, and hopefully will be done, not soon, but in near future. So, as a conclusion, of course, I have been talking about these things, questioning or re-questioning such a fundamental meaning of everything. What is the wall? What is the functions? What is Paris? What is the lifestyle in the Mediterranean Sea? What is the grids? All of those kind of things should be re-questioned again and again and again. Then you can reach to your own unique answers, your own unique new understanding of that. So please be questioning again and again and again. Be optimistic. It's quite important because you are making the future. And the future should be better, and you can be optimistic to make any kind of things. Of course, architecture design is quite tough. Sometimes crazy comments from crazy people. I don't say it's from the client, I don't say it from the normal people, but sometimes you get really tough period. But still, I hope you to be optimistic we can make it. We can make it better. And the last one is be honest. This is the most important thing. Be honest to people, be honest to the history, be honest to the cultural background, climate conditions, and be honest to the future, be honest to the past, be honest to the budget and the team, and be honest to yourself. You can be modest, but at the same time, you should be honest to yourself. So, thank you very much. That's it. Thanks. Thank you.